Greetings, friends.
My name is Steve Kelsey.
And I'm Ron Leota, and this is The Roles We Play, the show about the roles we play in the games we love. On the show today, we're going to talk about some of our favorite video games that you might not have played. Without further ado, let's start the show. All right, so video games. We've talked about them before.
Yeah,
We've talked about.
I've heard of them.
Yeah, we've played a couple.
Those are like board games, but on the television, right?
Right.
Yeah,
You know, you got to get the two little wires and hook that into your antenna, and you got to screw those on.
You know, completely and instantly sidetracking this entire conversation. Speaking of wires and antenna, we just recently picked up the Lego Nintendo Entertainment System set that Lego just released.
Oh, yeah.
Which is a little Nintendo the size of like the mini Nintendo. That came out, and then an old CRT television set. And when I say old CRT, I mean they modeled it after an early 80s model of a CRT. So it has like the bad wood paneling. And they actually did the back. They did the inputs. They did it has a physical dial. So it's more, that's actually a little bit more 70s, but it has a physical dial. And when you turn it, it makes a big like clippity clop knock on it, which is just amazing. And then the way that the screen works is you got this little lever Mario, and he's on this like little round like backing piece, but he's like a standout little figure. And then the level is on a crank, and you can actually roll the level inside the screen so it moves around like a gear device.
That's
so it's
really
like
cool.
He's going through a level. It's on fucking point is what it is. And I highly recommend it. It is expensive. It's like $220 if it's still in stock for regular MSRP. It's a Lego thing, so you know how they go.
Oh gosh.
But it's super fun to put together, and it even in the instructions gives you piece by piece instructions for that scene. So then you know how to then order the parts and make other game scenes if you want it to be different games.
Oh,
yeah, because it's all basically one buys vertically on like this like rotating kind of conveyor belt thing, and then it's little thin flat pieces to like color it or notch pieces, and so it's got just enough space for like those two of the three thin blocks to be there on the rotation, and it's all one by pieces. So it's like something that as it rolls, it kind of comes together and it's fine, and then it breaks apart on the other side. It's fucking some of the mechanics. I can't just go look it up on a video. It's so good. It's so classic, and it definitely put me in the mind of playing some of my favorite but lesser known video games. Bam, the transition is back.
What? Segues are weird.
Segues are weird.
All right, so
pointless.
I'm gonna start with one
yes,
that
please get us on task, Ron.
Well, I'm gonna start with one that is probably the most well known out of my list of three, and that's Persona 4. Now, I want to preface this with I played my first Persona game 2.5 months ago, which was Persona 4. I'm now playing through Persona 5, which is a lot of fun, but so I don't have that like nostalgic attachment that a lot of people have to the Persona series. I don't have that like, oh yeah, no, it's just the greatest because I loved it when I was a kid. I, as a grown-ass man, went and played it because they put Persona 4 Golden out on Steam, and everybody kept saying, a group of my friends like, Persona's the best. So picked up Persona 4, and frankly, it's been a long time since I've played a game and immediately been like, all right, this is now one of my favorite video games. And I think the big reason for that is that while it's a murder mystery and there are some dark themes about it, it's not trying so hard to be edgy. There's this genuine wholesomeness in the life simulator portion. So the game plays out like a JRPG, except between the JRPG combat, go through the dungeon-y portions, you are living the life of a high school student and with a fairly normal life other than you're investigating these weird murders and going into this TV world. There's long stretches where you're waiting for something to happen. So you're going out to eat with your friends, you're going out to the movies, you're getting your provisional license so you can ride your scooter to the beach with your friends. there's so much wholesome and adorable that goes on in this game that, quite frankly, it was just a breath of fresh air as a video game. And I'm noticing a lot with Persona 5, which I know it's flat out considered one of the best RPGs of all time by a lot of people. Frankly, I find Persona 4 to be a better game.
Ooh, hot take.
Hot
take. YouTube comments.
Oh, I'm gonna get. The
YouTube
attacked.
comments are going to be like at minute 37 seconds. Hot girls chatline.com.
Right.
Because spam comments. Yeah, no, that is a hot take though.
No, but for me, it's Persona 5 exchanged the wholesomeness and characters you can immediately fall in love with for edge and style.
Yeah.
Which style-wise, Persona 5 is gorgeous.
Oof.
But it's very edgy, and the whole game is built around, like, right out of the gate, the themes are like, oh, all right, so here's 2 different sexual assaults. Here's a bunch of violence. Oh, your character is immediately beaten up and drugged by the cops. I'm like, this is not the story at all. I mean, this is not the same theme or feel at all.
No.
So I guess maybe for me, and it could just be the time we're living in, the more wholesome feeling like I was this member of a community in a small town, all while also doing this kind of like secret double life thing, was so much more appealing, and I genuinely cared about all those characters to the point I went and watched the anime based on Persona 4, which basically just rewatched the same story I had just played.
Yeah, you just rewatched Persona 4. I wonder if Persona 5 had debuted in 2020, like basically January through now.
Oh, yeah.
If people would have also all kind of come to that take where it's like, this is a good game, but the same thing that happened with Last of Us 2, where people were like, is this the tone that we need right now from video games? With our world being on fire and everything. And the answer is, of course it is. Of course, for people that like that and for people that want to play that, it's there for them. No one game needs to monolithically address the entire disposition of an entire gaming community. That's ridiculous. But I think there'd be a lot more people on your side being like, I like this game. It's good visually. It's perfection, but I feel like it's very edgy, and right now that's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for something a little bit warmer in my escapism. So I definitely do that. I have never played Persona 4, but I have watched the anime. And I've only played like a couple hours of Persona 5 because I don't own it. Because I don't have enough time to invest in it, because I only have so much time for video games, and I'm very deliberate about actually buying or purchasing games that I have time for, and in theory have time to complete.
And like 80 hours minimum is a big ask. It's a big ask.
And Cyberpunk's coming.
And Cyberpunk is coming. I have my official Cyberpunk commemorative controller ready to go. Ooh. I am that guy. I'm going to play on a controller, and you can bite my butt if you don't like that. I don't care.
It's fine. It was made for a controller. It was made for a controller. I'm sorry, PC Master Race. It's made for a controller.
I'm going to play it on a PC with a controller.
Yeah.
Now get mad. Get real.
Yeah, get real mad. The UI and interaction was made with a controller in mind. Dance with the platform that brung ya, and that's how I rule all of the console arguments. Is just like, if it's made with the idea of dual analog sticks, then that's what it should be played with. If it's made with the idea that it's like, you're going to have a keyboard, you're going to have like 15 fucking hotkeys, you're going to have mouse accuracy, play it with that.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Done. Halo, made for a controller. Every other first-person shooter on the planet, not. So do that. Yeah, Persona 5, good one. I already forgot which my first one was, so I'm just going to pick one. I remember. In the vein of RPGs that are very different than your standard, even American RPG, and certainly than a standard Japanese RPG, or really anything, I will respond to a gem from the PS2 era.
Okay.
Released for the PlayStation 2 by a little commonly often ignored role-playing game company, Midway, is who made. They're the ones who published these games. back when they were a company. I know it's Mortal Kombat in this. Shadowhearts. So Shadowhearts is not a spin-off of Kingdom Hearts, as one might hope. It's
As some might hope.
there are three Shadowhearts games. You only need to worry about the first two Shadowhearts games. The third one is fine. It's just not nearly as good. And the Shadowhearts game are set in Europe, in a magical version of Europe during the World War I era. One is set, I want to say, just before the end of the war, and one is set shortly after the end of the war. Those years might move around. And the reason I'm bringing these up as a pair is the first two games are deeply intertwined. You could play either of them. You don't need to play the first one to play the second one. You will probably play the second one if you play the first one, simply because the first one is good. So I'm mostly going to talk about Shadowhearts 2 because I think it's the better of the two games, and also it's the one you can very easily play standalone. You're basically in this world investigating this sort of magical underground of World War I. You're coming off the climax of Shadowhearts 1, and the events immediately following that, with a large destruction of a real city in Europe, and some other magic apocalyptic shit. And its flavor is what it's about. Everything is unique in Shadowhearts. Number one, all of your characters in your party. It is a turn-based RPG with like some button mashy, limit breaky, combo-y kind of evolved stuff to make its active time battle system more entertaining. But all of your party members have unique things that level them up, and kind of a unique sort of story that goes around that's part of their character. For instance, one of your party members is a doll maker. He makes these adorable little dolls and dresses them up in dresses. He's a very old man. I believe they even call him Geppetto. Like there's no there's no hiding it. And the way that you upgrade that doll is there's these two merchants that can make dresses for that doll because they're very much into fashion. Problematic characters, absolutely. Warning, not very woke on certain things, but very, very late 90s, early aughts, worst narratives of Japan on queerdom. But they make these dresses, and to get the dresses, you need to find them pin-up pictures of gentlemen in very lewd poses, but technically not naked. You give them the pornography, they make you the dress. This was a whole Penny Arcade comic back when it was relevant. Both the game and Penny Arcade. Super diss. There's one person who has
take that hyper successful guys.
A blood type where how dare they be? No, I'm kidding. Penny Arcade's great. They're perfectly fine. If I'm just being a dick to be a dick. There's a blood type with a wrestler, and he finds new equipment that he uses because Japan has a big thing about blood types. He finds new equipment. He uses one big heavy weapon, like a log, like a caber log, and then eventually it's like a telephone pole, and then it's like a giant fish at some point. It's just large encumbering weapons. There's lots of cool things like that. Anastasia Romanoff is in your party. That's pretty exciting. So she's really good. And it's got your standard things. You go to different locations. There's not like an overworld map. It's very like map locations, Final Fantasy X-2 style, where you go to regions and then explore them.
Gotcha.
And then pop up to the map. But it's good. It's cool that it's set in history. There's a lot of historical fact woven into the fiction that's really neat. The story's really funny and really silly and really lighthearted. In how it expresses itself through the story, but it's a very apocalyptic, save the world sort of classic fantasy hero's journey thing, and I recommend it because almost no one else I've ever met has even heard of Shadowhearts. And the only reason I heard of it is because I managed the GameStop at the time, and someone traded it in, and I was like, what is this JRPG I don't know about? Young 20-something me was like, what is this JRPG I don't know about? I know all the JRPGs.
Midway, this must be crap.
And this must be crap. And then I played it and fell in love.
Nice. All right, so my next one is a really obscure, super weird one, but so I have a big heart for arcade beat 'em ups. They were my go-to games in the arcades when I was a kid. I love all of them. Alien vs. Predator, Vinyl Fight, you name it. I have probably gotten it and played it on emulator all the way through to the end, and probably pumped more quarters than I want to admit into those machines when you could go to the arcade and pump quarters into machines. So the one I want to talk about is super hard to find. It's super weird. It's called Ninja Baseball Batman.
Three things I like.
Right, and it has nothing to do with Batman, the character.
Good.
When we say Batman, I think it's
Man with a bat.
Yeah, it's a bad translation of batter for like a baseball team. So it's a baseball themed side-scrolling beat 'em up in which you play ninja baseball players who go to weirdly themed, loosely themed baseball areas and do your basic side scroll beat 'em up combat, but it's so colorful, the art style is so vibrant, and the combat is super responsive. So it hits all those points that make it just a great game in and of itself, but that really weird factor is what just puts it over the top. I think the first or second boss fight, you are in a jumbo jet fighting a boss who is another plane, but it's like a humanoid style cartoony plane that's inside of a plane, and you're fighting it, and it's such
Sounds fantastic.
Yeah,
I'm in.
It's bonkers. 3 playable characters, all of which have their own unique. You've got the fast guy, you've got the slow guy, you've got the balanced guy.
Yep.
And overall, again, it's just one of the most wild and wacky side scroll beat 'em ups. The only place I think I've ever heard of people hearing about this is if like I know James Rolfe, AVGN, he covered it a little bit in a weird like, hey, let's go to an arcade episode type thing. And I know that he has a video out about it, but other than that, I haven't really heard anybody cover it. When I saw him cover it, I was just like, oh my God, I remember that game. That is it's so good. And I went and I found it on emulator because it's a super rare arcade cab. But if you get a chance to play it, if you're able to acquire a copy to be able to play, I recommend it. It's 2 hours out of your life for wacky, colorful beat 'em up fun. And if you do it on emulator, unlimited quarters. So
yep.
There you go.
That sounds fantastic. So my second game is an even deeper cut because I'm an old person.
Okay.
And I only play AAA titles now. That's not 100% true, but it's kind of true. It's all I really have time for is a couple. I guess Outer Worlds was a AA title technically, but and I played some indie games. I guess my next game is an indie game, so never mind. I'm lying entirely. But I don't play a lot of nearly as many video games as I'd like right now. But the thing that I'm going to go back to is a little platformer on the Super Nintendo by the name of Bob. And it was B-O-B. I can't remember what B-O-B even stands for anymore. And it's a space platformer where you're a robot named Bob. And if I recall correctly, there's an alien villain that like knocks down your ship, and then you find out he's trying to destroy the galaxy, and you have to stop him. I don't need to give a lot of details about this. You can absolutely find it on the interwebs. Use your Google search, just Super Nintendo Bob, SNES Bob. We'll get you there. But a couple key functions, a lot of cool tools and everything to get by. The much more popular kind of oddball platformer on the Super Nintendo, Earthworm Jim, and it feel very similar. They have a very similar like jive to them. And Earthworm Jim is very like goofy, wacky, and Bob is just sort of like odd. It's got a very odd world sort of like meets Earthworm Jim sort of like aesthetic to it. And I really liked it. I thought it was a good game. You get all these abilities. It plays real well. It's just the right of challenging as it goes. Your tools are consistently useful. Like they don't rotate out as no longer functional. And you can get kind of clever with it. And it's just got a lot of style and presence, and is one of those games where it would be kind of an automatic pickup if it was released as an indie game now, where it would be like, oh yeah, if this is $5, I'm just going to bang it out.
Oh yeah.
And it's not long, like most of those games. Once you get pretty good at them, you can burn through them pretty quick. But it's fun and it's challenging. I think it was an Interplay game, and they were very good at these kinds of games. So yeah, go look it up on the internet. Highly recommend. I just remember that when you die, you turn into like a puddle with like two big circular Simpson-style blinky eyes.
I have played this.
Yeah, you've played it. Yeah, a lot of people might have actually played it and forgotten about it because they never franchised it or anything.
I rented it from Magic Video in Renton.
It's one of those rentals. It's one of those rental games. And it would have been a perfect rental game because it's the kind of thing that if you're focused on it, you can beat it in a weekend. And feel pretty good about that. But yeah, it's definitely. So go find it. It's a fun, obscure game. And though there are a lot of modern day indie platformers, there's something to be said about the 90s era when that was the thing, where they might not have had all of the tricks in the magic chest to kind of put things in and make it cooler, but they had a lot of grace in how they just made something that was essentially a very similar game to another game just still fun, because they just understood those level perspectives and stuff like that in a way that a modern game developer might be distracted or just have a different vision. For them, it was like, all right, so you've got about this much movement. This is about the cadence of the speed, and then you get all mathematic about it. Yeah. And start doing it.
All right, so I'm going to go with another...
It's your third one.
My third one. And this is another one that I think people have heard of, but I don't think a lot of people have actually sat down and played this game through. That's Deadly Premonition. It's seeing a resurgence because a sequel after over a decade has finally come out. I would recommend picking up that sequel in a couple more months after they put 2 or 3 more patches on it, because right now it runs at the frame rate of a potato. Yeah. But I'm going to stop. So I haven't played the sequel yet, but the original is by far one of my favorite games. It is Twin Peaks. You're basically playing Twin Peaks, the game, with a...
Not a bad thing.
Right, with a Silent Hill-esque combat mechanic. So you play this FBI agent who comes to a small town where this horrible murder has taken place. Same setup as Twin Peaks. The body's found. It's kind of weird. This one's in a tree. There's twins, whatever. So York, the detective, goes to this small, super weird, quirky little town, middle of nowhere America, and has to investigate this murder, and then keeps getting kind of put into these like Silent Hill combat sections where you're kind of facing these weird contortionist, dark-eyed monster things. But anyway, it's a super fun story. There's a lot of heart and quirk to it, but it's also one of those games that you're gonna have to put up with a ton of jank. It is a cult classic for a reason. Would I say that this is, as a video game, mechanically a great game? Abso-fucking-lutely not. The driving mechanic is garbage. It controls very clunky. But as an overall game experience and as a story, I find myself years later coming back and still thoroughly enjoying being in that world. And if you did want to try it, the cool thing is they, to promote the now years later sequel, they put out Deadly Premonition 0, which is just the original Deadly Premonition, but with, able to work on modern screens, and it's out on I think it's a I was gonna say Wii, why the hell would I say that, Switch exclusive, and it's fun. It was great getting to go back to that, so you have access to it on a marketplace. It's a ton of fun. It's by that absolute madman Swery, who makes is known for making super eccentric games, and this game, I think eccentric is the perfect word for it. It is just it's the most eccentric third person investigative action game, I guess. That's an open world game before open world games were super common. So it shows where a lot of open world mechanics come from. This is back, I think shortly after Shenmue. So this was not when we were in our heyday of the Assassin's Creed. This was a, PS1 or PS2 era game.
You got me thinking about my third one. So, as I said, this is more of a modern game. This one's a weird one. We both played it. And I only bring it up because I feel like it's not so much that it's unaware. I just think that it's hard to really get into mentally for a lot of gamers because it's kind of a unique experience. So, it's a game called Pyre from Supergiant. Supergiant Games, everyone knows Bastion on the planet. That was their opening foray, and it won all the awards, and it deserved them.
Absolutely.
And then Transistor was an excellent follow-up. It's also gorgeous. It's also meaningful. The music is also perfection. And then Pyre came out, and so Pyre is very good, but it is not those two games.
It is not. It is so weird.
Pyre is like 3-on-3 basketball game with murder. And that's really the best way to describe it. So the setup is you're kind of in like this sort of like dungeon afterlife kind of concept. And you have to basically fight your way to the top and like fight your way out, rank your way up to have a chance to escape. And there's a new Game Plus mechanic, and there's all these fucking cool things. But there's three things. If you know Bastion and you know Transistor, Pyre is just as gorgeous. Absolutely. The music is phenomenal. There is quite literally almost 3 times as much music available inside of Pyre than there are for either Bastion or Transistor. The composer...
I'm pretty sure it's the same composer.
It's Darren Korb. You might be able to go to Dying of Exposure's YouTube and listen to me interview him about all 4 of the Supergiant games that have come out. But it's the same guy, because I've known Darren for. I say this. I've been acquainted with Darren, I should say, since about a year after Bastion release, maybe about 6-7 months after it, when I interviewed him for another website. And
nice.
Because I love game composers and I want to talk to them all about their systems. And so, you can get details specifically on the music side of that. But Pyre, it's hard because it's not like any other game. It's not like a sports game that adds violence like a classic arch rivals sort of concept. It's not that. It's very much like a dungeon-y fight game, but it's very much also a sports game. And that means that it's wholly unique, and it's very fun, and like all Supergiant games, it has a lot of like meaning and emotion kind of just as like a tone through it that makes it hit you harder than most indie games. And then that unified vision of aesthetic and music and gameplay that they always come with on their games is totally there in this odd little sporting event combat.
And I know sports is like a bad word for a lot of nerds. I am not a sports fan. I don't watch or play sports or enjoy sports video games, and I thoroughly enjoyed Pyre. It was so cool.
Yeah.
And I was surprised because my friend was like, "Yeah, you got to try Pyre." And I'm like, "Yeah, but it looks like a basketball game." And it's like, "Yeah, it kind of, but like just play it. You can afford it. It's like $10 right now."
Yeah.
I'm like, "All right, I'll try it." And sure enough, hooked me.
Also, sports is a bad word for a lot of nerds, but so many motherfuckers have played NBA Jam and NFL Blitz, and those are fine, right? Like it's not like it's a sports simulator, folks.
I played golf. I played the shit out of golf
Nintendo,
on the NES.
And I had golf. I had golf in my life. I think golf is on the back post like glued to the wall of my office in my like grid of NES cartridges that is glued to the wall of my office. I love golf. On honorable mention or dishonorable mention for me, which I have to realize because I always think that this is I have endless childhood memories that are positive of playing a game called Gemfire. It came out in the SNES and Genesis generation. It is a tactical game. You are on the island of Gemfire. There's roughly 30 regions on the island of Gemfire with different factions that you can play in different eras and everything, and your goal is to take over the island. Essentially, it's very proto. I think it's actually made by Koei too. So it's very proto Romance Three Kingdoms kind of thing. Okay. But you can really only like move troops, cultivate, build your defenses, do diplomacy, and attack. Like you have like 6 actions basically that you can do each month, and then the months go by, and it's turn based. And I have so many good memories of this game. Number 1, I found like no one else that has ever played it. Number 2, whenever I load it into a phone or I load it onto an emulator of some kind, I play it for like 20 minutes and I'm like, why the fuck did I ever play this game? It is so boring. You have to spend basically your entire first year and a half or so just building resources. You're just getting baked goods and recruiting troops and getting baked goods and recruiting troops and doing some alliances, and then you get to make your move. And only then do you get to make your move, and you get to take over several areas, and then you got to build resources. So it's not good. It's not good. and don't play it. But if you want to play a game that nobody's played before, and I am literally talking about a game where over 1,000 people have not been able to say that they have ever played that, and they're all serious, like, long-time gamers. Gemfire is your in, I guess, if you want one that almost no one's played.
I've never heard of it.
It's not good. If you look at the good art, if you look at the art on the game, it doesn't scream I'm gonna be good either. Like nothing about the game looks good. I don't know what it was about. I think it's just because of the kid that I was at the time. I was just really into the idea of like political intrigue, even though that's not in the game. There's no real there. You can like defect vassals over to you, which is a great way to obtain land. But there's even like a system where you just do something to their province for a certain number of times. You get a certain score down and then you do it. So it's not like it's like, oh, is there a chance it will happen? You just mechanically make it happen. Like it's a bad game, Ron. Don't play it, but don't play it.
I'm glad it made it into this episode.
Watch the worst Let's Play ever. The most boring Let's Play. Maybe I'll do it for New Time Nostalgia once, and I'll just be like, here's 2 hours or 3 hours of Gemfire on Twitch.
You're going to fucking regret that.
Oh, I'm going to need to make sure that chat is full of distractions.
Oh, man. All right, well, I don't really have any dishonorable mentions. I mean, I have a million honorable mentions because I like a lot of indie games. Like one of my I really started playing a ton of indie games when the golden age of the Xbox 360 had all those really great indie releases.
Meat Boy and Braid and all those sort of come around.
Explosion Man will be my favorite callback to that. That and Dishwasher the Dead Samurai.
Dishwasher the Dead Samurai was dope. Yeah, that was a dope game.
They made a second one.
Yes, they did.
Unfortunately, I can't play it. It has so many photosensitivity warning. And I'm not that photosensitive. However, extreme flashing can get to me. I have a little bit of epilepsy. I don't care if people know that.
Just a pinch.
It's a pinch of epilepsy. And so it's one of the very, very few video games I've actually found that I physically can't play. It was too much. That and the new Blair Witch game. I couldn't play that.
That's sad.
Cause
I hear that game's pretty decent.
The amount of it I got to play was really cool, and then I got to a dark section, and I'm like, this is constant flashing, bright white, then total darkness, and it doesn't work for me. But so those are a couple of honorable mentions from that era if you can find them. Explosion Man, especially hard as balls platformer, and you have move and explode.
Yeah.
And explode is your way of propelling yourself through the air. You can explode 3 times before having to land on the ground and recharge. And there are later mechanics where you can use a thing to recharge you, or a thing will take your charges away. But overall, it's one of those games where towards the end of the game, you have to play levels perfectly or you literally can't beat them.
Yeah.
And I like that sort of thing, because I am a total glutton for punishment when it comes to platformers. But that's just me.
I am not. I've played hard ones. I've beaten a couple of them, but I would much rather Telltale just walk me through some quick time events and tell me a story, or play something like Outer Worlds or like Fallout 4 or something like that, where it's like, well, yeah, like I could die, but that's on me, isn't it?
I could aim on my own, but I mean, there's VATS.
Yeah, it's like
and headshot.
Yeah, it's like I'm not a pro gamer. It's why my gaming Twitch stream is all JRPGs from the 90s. And even in those I die because I'm just sort of recklessly going through them and just being like, oh, I bought the boss, but fortunately I save all the time. So we're going to back that up, and we're going to go grind a little bit while I chat with the room. But yeah, that's it. That's all I got for good retro video games.
Yeah, and I think that's a good...
Or good not retro video games. Good lesser known video games.
Yeah, and so there you go. I think we'll wrap it up here. If you do want to check out some old-timey retro RPG action, check out Noontime Nostalgia.
Yep, Mondays and Thursdays, 12 p.m. Pacific.
Playing Super Mario RPG right now?
Yep, Super Mario RPG right now. Just beat Chrono Trigger last week. And so we're playing through Super Mario RPG, and then and that one I remember volumes less than I remembered of Chrono Trigger. I remembered a lot of Chrono Trigger. I played Super Mario RPG within the year that it came out, and then never again. So it's been like 23 years.
Isn't it great?
I've played it. So all of it's brand new to me. I barely remember any of it.
Yeah, once you get into the decade range with a game, it's like I can play it again and be like, I have forgotten 3/4 of this game. I remember the premise and a couple of the story beats, usually a spoiler, but then like the rest of it is all super fresh.
But yeah, I picked it because Paper Mario's RPG came out recently, and some people had recommended it, and then when someone had recommended it, and I was like, I haven't played that in forever, and it also goes with the theme of my fanboying for Square back in their heydays in the 90s when they used to just help other studios. They made their own perfect JRPGs, and then they would reach out and be like, would you like us to make you a perfect JRPG with your properties, or us to consult with you to help your RPG be better? And everyone in the 90s was like, yeah, no, please do that. Please teach us this market.
All right, well, thanks for checking out the show. Of course, you can always check us out over on YouTube or Facebook at Dying of Exposure, or at The Roles We Play. The website's therolesweplay.podbean.com, and yeah, I think that's it. Anything Dying of Exposure wise coming up soon that you wanna...
Yeah, there's something coming up, Ron. There's something with tabletop and role playing. It's going to be a podcast, which is different.
What?
That's different for Dying of Exposure, right?
Okay.
It's going to be a podcast. We're doing a D&D actual play podcast. I'm running it, and Ron's going to be one of the players.
What? Oh, what?
Yep, you are.
Oh, no. I was going to pretend like I didn't know what you were talking about.
You're going to be a bard.
I'm going to play a bard.
Yeah, and it's going to be good. Everyone's a small-sized creature. So that'll be interesting. There's sports in it, so get ready, nerds.
Think our conversation on Pyre a little bit.
That's kind of the goal. It wasn't inspired by Pyre. I thought about Pyre because I've been thinking about that game, but episodes probably aren't coming out for another what is it? It's August now, for another couple months. Because we're looking to record sessions in advance, get those edited, get some buffer for it. But yeah, we're going to be going live with that, and that will be at wherever you want to listen to podcasts, whenever I figure out what the hell it's going to be called. Still haven't figured it out. We're going to figure it out probably in our first recording session of like what we want to call it, what it feels like. And so the next couple episodes, I guess, before it comes out, the September through October episodes will eventually have something that we can say, go to this, and I'll even have like a domain for it, so it'll be that.com, and it'll link to
this is just
everything.
This is the taste. This is
the taste.
This is because you are a loyal listener of the roles we play. We're going to give you that just a little bit, just a little nugget.
So be excited for our D&D actual play podcast. There'll be music. There'll be action. There'll be sports. There'll be small creatures in a world of not small creatures. There'll be there's probably a dwarf tabaxi hitting on the rest of the party members.
There will absolutely be that, and I'm not playing that.
You're not. You're the bard. Is not
I'm the bard.
The bard is not the hornball.
I'm gonna particularly play a bard that's not trying to fuck everything.
Yeah,
I know that's against bardic.
That's against bardic rules, but
you know.
It's like, are you sure you're not just a ranger that's very good at performing? But yeah, so yeah, check that out. There'll be more updates here. There'll be more updates over at Dying of Exposure. Also, since this is coming out this month, September is when we get back up to our regular YouTube video normal uploading schedule at Dying of Exposure. So there'll be regular videos over on the YouTube. Things like Highly Illogical will be back, Nerd Music and Judgment will be back, more Snack Venturism, thing called Elder Bop Archives, more You About to Know with Shubzilla, all that shit.
Nice.
That'll start coming up.
Well, all right, everybody. Thanks again for listening or watching, depending on what medium you're consuming this. I am Ron. For Steve and the roles we play, I will play myself out.